Welcome back to the Own It podcast. My name is Deon, and in today's episode, we're mixing things up a little bit. We are going to do frequently asked questions. So this week I put up on my social media, hey, if you guys got any questions, I'm here to try answer them for you, at least give you my opinion, and hopefully I can help clarify a couple of things. But even if you haven't asked any questions, there's going to be a lot of short, quick questions I'll answer here. Should be a lot of takeaways still. It's probably going to be one of the more factual episodes I'll have. I reckon I should hopefully bust some myths today. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. First question from Ella. If a property is off market but is due to hit the market soon, is it worth offering before it hits or wait for an official open home to get a better sense of what it's worth to avoid over offering? That's a great question, Ella. First of all, there's a couple of things kind of at play. There's a big kind of misconception when it comes to off markets. There are off markets, but then there's also pre-markets, and that's sort of like if a property is going to go online regardless, and they just want to kind of get a bit of a gauge on market activity before they launch it. That's more of a pre-market, but I'd say an off-market is actually a property that has every intention of selling off-market. So the fact you've kind of mentioned waiting for the first official open home probably suggests it's a pre-market, which would tell me the vendors would be quite reluctant to take something before launching since they've already committed to potentially staging, potentially they've already committed to photos already. So they've made a financial investment. It's pretty unlikely they're going to sell it without being impressed with an offer prior. So then you have to sort of work out what is it quoted, what are their expectations, and then you have to work out what you think it's worth. If you think it's worth a number and you offer that and they say no, then that's fine. You haven't done anything wrong. If they say yes and you know it's worth it, then again, you also haven't done anything wrong. I think the more important thing here is probably something you haven't asked, which is the impact on making an offer in a pre-market inspection, which is you are potentially revealing to the agents your budget, you're revealing to the owners what you're prepared to pay. So if the campaign doesn't perform as well, you have to think of the long-term implication of making an offer pre-market, which is that then they will never accept anything less, or very unlikely will accept anything less than you have previously offered. So you always have to think of the implication of what you're doing. But at the same time, if you're offering what it's worth, then there's no harm done. Second question here, Annie Banani. Is it difficult to sell a lovely home with a rumpus room that does not have council approval? The biggest thing you have to overcome here is the fact you have a material fact on your hands, which is that the rumpus room does not have approval. There's two ways you could go about this. You could seek approval from the council, and if you didn't do those works yourself, you could sort of plead that you weren't aware of it, and as long as the rumpus room meets sort of building code, there's a chance that they will approve it, but there's also the chance they won't. And so you have to be mindful if you engage into that conversation and it doesn't go the way you want, you may lose that rumpus room, and that is going to potentially have a bigger impact on your selling price than if you just declared it as a material fact to all buyers and just made them aware. It's a really tough one, but I would always kind of recommend to any client, sometimes it's best just to cut your losses and move on. Malcolm has another question. Is there an advantage to buying a house off market? Definitely. If you can get into a property off market and they have every intention of selling off market, then you can beat the competition. It's that simple. The best way to kind of use this example is to kind of compare extremes. One extreme is an auction and one is off market. At auction, the reserve price is sort of the vendor's minimum expectation, but a price they would sell at. And the competitive bidding at an auction normally pushes well above that reserve. So there's a clear difference between what the vendor would have taken versus what the market says that property is worth. In an off-market scenario, if you have no competition, you're not having to worry about competitive bidding or sort of competitive offers. So you have a chance to have a crack at a vendor at their minimum expectation. Now, a vendor may also put a higher minimum expectation on and off market. It's probably not the same as what a reserve would be, but the difference is instead of beating other buyers, you actually get to work a vendor down off their price if you have exclusive access or if it's just you that's offering. So off markets have a massive advantage, but I also would say there's sort of this misconception that you can buy off market properties for 5 to 10% less than what the market value is. Market value is what someone's prepared to pay for a property. So if you buy it, you're paying market value. If you buy it at auction, you're paying market value. If a vendor isn't prepared to pay money to advertise the property, they don't get the chance to explore if they could have got more. So they sell it for market value. But that's a really good question. And often it's quite a topical conversation with clients that come to us. Can we get off markets? How does that work? Yes, you definitely can. And if you want to not use a buyer's agent to get off markets, the best thing you can do is build relationships with agents and be really proactive about it. Agents are less likely to send off markets to you. Often what they send to you, they are also sending to every other buyer. So they're not really exclusive or off market. The best off markets are when you can build good relationships and get access to properties that no one else does. Malcolm also asked another really good question. What is one tip for a buyer that is struggling to buy and there is no stock online? This is also really common and where a lot of buyers struggle. They'll come to us, we've been looking for 6 months and we just can't find anything online that works for us. Unfortunately, although not every buyer wants to accept this, the reality that they can't find anything they like is often budget related. It's really that simple. You have to, and the best way to work it out is if you took budget aside and you gave yourself a limitless budget, would you be able to find the property that you like? Normally the answer is yes. So then if the answer is yes, then you need to come back to your budget. Are you prepared to increase your budget to open up more opportunities, or do you have to decrease your expectation? Normally that's one of the toughest conversations we have to have with buyers before we sign them up, is potentially what you're chasing doesn't exist, and that's why you can't find it online. Or if you do find it online, it tends to sell above what you're prepared to pay. Lucas with a great question. Best and worst selling agent you worked with, but why? So you don't name names. I like that. I wasn't going to name anyone. I don't want to expose anyone. Put simply, in my opinion, the best agents to work with are ones that are great at communicating and really transparent. That helps everyone get a fantastic result. That helps their vendor. That helps me. I think the nature of my position in the transaction allows agents to probably be more open and more transparent than potentially a regular buyer. And so sort of having that relationship with them really helps, and it is mutually beneficial. So I would say that's what makes the good agents to deal with good, the ones that have great communication and are really transparent. And obviously that's also what makes the bad ones bad. Ones that don't want to tell you anything, ones that don't really want to deal with you, their communication's poor. At the end of the day, we're here to achieve the same outcome, which is to get our clients purchased or sold. So it's normally easy just to work with each other. That's my 2 cents anyway. And also Lucas has asked, would be cool to hear how you started the business and made the transition. Well, originally I was a sales agent and I did that for about 4 to 5 years. Decided that I wanted to get out of that space and start in the buyer advocacy position. I had a chance with someone else when they were starting their business. Started that, did that for about 18 months and kind of just got to the stage where I thought, I feel like I could do this myself. And I had sort of the aspiration to kind of have, I'd say, my name on the door. Like maybe that's just me being a little proud, but I really wanted to kind of grow my own thing. I think that's what it came down to. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have a crack myself. And that's pretty much what I did. And it was really scary, to be honest. Like I thought I made the wrong decision for a couple months, but obviously now in hindsight, almost a year and a half in, super glad I took the chance. And I think that's all it is. It's just taking a chance. And I think I would have regretted not taking the chance than taking it and failing. I can definitely live with that. So that's how I got into it. David Pelligra here, a guest of the podcast. Thanks for sending this question, mate. I feel like you know the answer, but I feel like you're trying to give me some content, so I appreciate it. David's asked, sales agent versus buyer agent, because some people don't quite understand the difference, especially because when I post on TikTok or Instagram, a lot of people in the comments hate on me because they think I'm a sales agent and they think the advice I'm providing is potentially to mislead buyers into falling into a trap. First of all, not true. The advice I provide is just free information. But to answer this question, put simply, a sales agent represents the seller and a buyer's agent represents a buyer. So sellers have always had representation. You don't need representation, but rule of thumb and what's very common is that a seller will engage a real estate agent to sell a property, and often buyers don't have any representation, which is quite scary when you think about the fact that most buyers are spending anywhere between $500,000 up to $3 million. And it's not something they do every day. So it's quite scary they don't have any representation. A buyer's agent represents them, and a good one should help them save some time, money, and stress along the way. And that's what we aim to achieve. Dylan here with a great question. How do you compete with first home buyers? We're all capped at, say, $750,000. How would I get on the edge on someone in the same position? So essentially all buyers have the same budget. couple of things here. I'm assuming this is sort of stamp duty related since your budget. Stamp duty is a sliding scale. So I say to all buyers, kind of look into that and work out, the difference between 750 and 760. It's good to know those numbers because sometimes buyers think they are capped at 750,000. But let's sort of get into what to do when all buyers are at the same price, because this can also, it doesn't have to be first home buyer related. Let's even just say there's multiple offers at 750,000 on a property. So you have to work out how you can make your offer more competitive, and price isn't always the determining factor. Your settlement you can make more attractive. Your terms you can make more attractive. Your deposit you can make more attractive. So there's these sorts of things you can do. So when it's leading up to offers closing, you may actively look to do a building and pest inspection before making your offer. Or you may speak to your broker and they say, hey, you don't actually need a finance clause. You might remove that. You'll get your contract reviewed up front. If you're unconditional at 750 on the vendor's preferred settlement with a 10% deposit and you're up against other offers that have conditions, you will buy it. So just think of other ways to sort of strengthen your offer that isn't just price. Have a question here from End. I don't know their name. That's their username. So we'll just run with that. How do you go about submitting an offer prior to a property inspection? What kind of clause or conditions should you put in your offer? This kind of brings me back to COVID times when a lot of people actually hadn't seen properties they were making offers on. Some would just do video walkthroughs and then make an offer. What we saw some buyers do, and I thought that was smart, was, hey, we're prepared to make an offer at this amount, and we're offering this subject to our physical inspection of the property to our satisfaction. I'm not a conveyancer. I can't write up clauses, but look, ChatGPT is pretty good. Just use that, or speak to a conveyancer, write a clause up. But that's what I would be putting in there. Subject to our physical inspection, we would be prepared to pay this. And I would put a really short time frame on it, because that sort of eliminates this scare factor from the vendor that you may sort of take 2 weeks to come and inspect it. I'd be making an offer, three business days to get to the property, to take a look at it and make your decision up, make your mind up. And for example, in Melbourne, that runs in conjunction with the 3-day cooling off period, which even if you'd physically inspected it, you could still use. So I feel like that can sort of alleviate any concerns. Sneaky Sparky Dad, how negotiable are agents on a bank repossession when there is a quoted price? Great username, by the way. I tend to find in sort of all those properties like repossession sales, I feel like they're very limited with negotiations prior. Like often I find it's auctions, the bank just sets a reserve, let it fly. And if it pulls up short, then they're prepared to sell for less. I find that before the auction though, they very rarely would even consider an offer, because it's not emotional. It's more, this is what we think it's worth and this is what we're prepared to sell it at, and let it run its course. That's what I find, because I guess a bank's biggest fear is that an agent may sell it to someone that they know for under what it's worth. So the easiest way is to give it transparency, and that's why often a lot of repossessions are sold by auction. Ash Mitchell here, 2 questions for you. First of all, if the agent has had a building and pest inspection done, should I trust it or still order my own anyway? And second question, do you have a significantly worse chance at auctions if you are bidding online? 2 really good questions. First of all, I would probably say get your own building and pest inspection. The building and pest inspection that is done may be great, but it also may not be. And so it's not that every building and pest inspection done by an agent is bad or has bad intent or is hiding anything. But I know from personal experience that I've bought reports from other inspectors and then had Colin, who was on a previous episode, go inspect that property. Colin found major defects with the property and the other report had none. And then that helped us get a better price. So it's just really, I think it more comes down to finding a really good building and pest inspector and trusting them. And then I would always recommend, once you have a good building and pest inspector, to get them to do a report themselves rather than buying another report. Now, in saying that, sometimes you don't always have the chance. Sometimes you might pivot on a property late, it's competitive, and you do need to buy another report. But this is great if you've already had a good building and pest inspector do a report. You'll know what a good report looks like. And so then if you compare it to another report you've purchased, you could probably start to get a bit of a feel for how thorough they are compared to a good building and pest inspector. And your second question about bidding online, do you have a significantly worse chance? I always kind of go to the rule of thumb, like you can only buy an auction 2 ways. You have more money, or it appears you have more money. Bidding online doesn't give you a chance to appear as if you have more money. And I'm not saying, and I see this a lot, pull up in mum and dad's car right at the front of the auction and wear your best designer clothes and then jump out and bid. I'm not saying that, but I think, well, what I know for a fact is really consistent, strong bidders buy property. And buyers that don't break their bids down, buyers that ooze confidence and it looks and appears that they know what they're doing, that is what deters other bidders, because so many buyers break their budget at an auction. So many buyers go in with the mindset to go to $1 million and then they end up buying it for $1,050,000. So what you have to do is avoid that happening. You have to bid aggressive. You have to bid strong. You have to give confidence that there's no need for them to break their budget because they were never going to buy it. So it's very hard to do that online. So I would say, yeah, you probably do have a worse chance of buying a property if you're bidding online. Great questions, Ash. Really like it. Finn, how early is too early to be considering getting into the property market? I don't have much in the bank. Is it useful to look at property prices now, given they'll change so much by the time I'm in a position to buy in sort of 3 to 5 years? It's never too soon or never too early to ever get into the property market. I think the best time to buy was always yesterday, unless you're in a down market. But I would always say time in the market beats timing the market. So the sooner you can buy, always the better. And again, an extreme example is if you look back 50 years ago, what property prices were then compared to now. It's a great example of what time in the market can do to a property buy. In saying that, you also have to be in a position to buy, and comfortably too. Everyone's different. Some people are super prepared to redline and stretch themselves as far as possible to get in as soon as possible. And some people don't want to stretch and use their max budget because they still want lifestyle. So you also have to work out yourself what's comfortable for you, what makes sense for you. But I would always recommend, you're never going to regret buying a good property sooner than later. But make sure it's the right property. That's also where people go wrong. They rush in and they get into the bottom of the market, or they rely on government incentives to get into the market. And some of the government incentives, like in Victoria, where you can save on stamp duty if you buy off the plan, it's not actually setting you up for success. And so often buyers will rush into the market, cutting corners, and because of that, they'll pay a higher price in a property that doesn't perform. So although it's good to get into the market sooner than later, it's better to get into the market at the right property price, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. Sanasa, I think that's how you pronounce your name. Building pest inspection comes back saying the house has a slump 5 centimeters towards the rear. What do you do next? Walk away or renegotiate the cost it might take to fix it? Great question. Anytime there's a major structural defect, the first question you have to ask yourself is, do I still want to buy this property? That's the first question you should ask. And if the answer is no, you already have your answer. But if the answer is yes, then from there it's like, okay, well, what do we have to do? And you're already along the right path with what you're saying about, do we renegotiate? 100%. You need to renegotiate. Get a quote, use that as leverage, and you can normally ask for even more off. But another thing that's really important is send the building and pest inspection to the agent, because then that becomes a material fact and they have to disclose that moving forward. So trap the vendor into selling with you, because that'll scare the vendor that they have to disclose that moving forward. And if they have to disclose it moving forward, they may lose a lot of buyers along the way. So it's better to deal with you. So trap the vendor into working with you and then hit them with a discount on the sales price or the purchase price. And don't just ask for the quote. I would also ask for the inconvenience. Now, if the property is also vacant, this is where you can also ask for a licensed agreement to do works to the property prior to settlement, so you can get in at settlement with everything done. Great question. And final question, Jenna, if the property profile says accepting offers over X amount, or let's just use rough examples. In Melbourne, we've got quotes. So let's say there's a quote between 1 to 1.1 or a single ask saying 1 million. Is it worth offering under, or do we offer above? What's the strategy behind the agent? It's a great question and something I actually want to spend a bit more time on. So in the next episode, I'm going to break this question down, spend a little bit more time working out how to value properties, where to put offers in, and how quotes can affect where we put offers in on properties. We'll catch you in the next episode. Have a great week.